And we are live. So happy Wednesday, everyone. I was going to say happy afternoon. I know, Sam, where you are, it's the morning. Today, we've got the awesome Sam Wiltshire on the call. Sam finished up with us in the 1% Blueprint a couple of months ago now, Sam, wasn't it? And he's kindly taken 20 minutes out of his day to talk through his experience, what it's been like, and give you guys some key learning. So for anyone watching, it should be a good one. Sam, before we jump off, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do, where you're based?
Yeah. So obviously Sam Wiltshire's. Where am I based? I'm based in Canada, so Nova Scotia. What do I do? So I'm currently a director and I work for a financial technology company in Canada. So
Busy, full on, kids.
oh
the
yeah,
whole works,
yeah. To add to that as well,
Always,
personal life.
always.
I've got
Off 2 seconds. Siri's just decided to start talking to me whilst we're talking, Sam. So I just need to turn him off. Right. So that being said, let's rewind. I know I say it's been a couple of months since we've finished now, hasn't it? Let's rewind, say 5 months ago. You, I think, probably saw a couple of my bits on LinkedIn, maybe saw a post of another client. Like, what was your motivation for getting in touch and having a chat? Back when we first sort of spoke to each other. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? I think I was going through a stage in my life where I was questioning a lot. I've got quite a full-on job, full-on life. Made some big changes in my life over the last couple of years that have kind of added to that pressure. I moved to Canada, moved my family here, sold up everything, risked it all. Now work for a technology company. Quite a senior role, a lot of responsibility. I think for me, but I mean, everything was going great in my life. I'm ticking all those boxes that everyone wants to tick. But, honestly, I think deep down there was a big part missing in my life. There was, they say like, it's all about fulfillment really. And I think I was at that stage in my life where I had to ask a few questions, dig a bit deeper, ask some questions about myself, maybe address some things that I've been avoiding. Sorry. And then, Luke, you, a couple of people I know had pinged you or flagged you to me, and then I saw one of them. And I mean, all good reviews. So I thought, why not? Let's reach out and have a chat. And then,
and I think what you're explaining there, Sam, like, sadly, it's quite a common narrative, and it's that, like, well, especially with a lot of gents that I work with, it's like, well, on paper everything's great, I've got nice house, kids, wife, where I'm at a decent place in my career, but maybe like fundamentally not feeling fully, like you say, fulfilled or really happy with where you're at, and it's like a bit like there's kind of an itch I can't scratch, and I don't know what it is and what it's about, and it's that I'm not in a hole necessarily, but it's like I'm just not happily, particularly happy or excited by life and thriving. Right? Is that kind of a fair summary?
Yeah, and I think as well, look, for me, life is all about achievements. Like it sort of in my life as well. Like I like to think that when I get to the end of my days, I can look back and I can go, okay, what did I achieve and what didn't I achieve? And I think like physical as well, physical and mental, like health, the upper echelon was something that for me, I want to tick off as well. So I wanted to say, yeah, do you know what? I pushed myself mentally, I pushed myself physically, and I couldn't have done any more. It's not one of those questions that I wanted to leave unanswered.
Yeah. And I think also we're cognizantly aware of the fact that if we are leaving stuff on the table or you're not quite where you want to be, both physically or mentally, and if you're sort of in a kind of a bit of a funk, it's like, well, that doesn't sit with me and where I want to be. And also that can play out and impact other areas of your life as well. There's the whole, like, for your own self and your own personal development, but equally, if you're not feeling your best and showing up as your best, that always bleeds into other areas like family, relationships, even work. Like, clearly you're amazing at what you do, but equally, if you're not in the best headspace, you're not necessarily going to be the most objective and I guess proactive that you could be, given how you're feeling. And for me, that comes back to that whole, like, your state and how you're showing up and how you're feeling, right?
Yeah, and I think, you're spot on there as well. When I've got kids as well, young kids. I've got 2 young sons, and for me as well, it's also creating a process by which not only I can follow it, but I can pass it on to my kids as well. Because I think it's good to start. There's so I mean, it's I think you are a role model, and your kids are very much going to be a product of how you teach them and how you mold them. And I think Yeah.
It's that leadership thing, isn't it? I think it's like wanting to be like a good leader for yourself, for your kids, your family, at work, and the whole piece. And it's, if you're practicing what you preach and doing what you say, and you're in a good spot with how you're living your life, how you're showing up, and that sort of stuff, well, then you're aligned, and I would say you generally feel fulfilled, because there's not a gap you're trying to plug. You're where you want to be, and if you're not, that feels a bit like it's a tricky place to thrive from, right?
Yeah, 100%.
If that's where we were, then Sam, let's kind of fast forward, to where we are today. Like I said, I like to, when I have these conversations with gents who are like, we've not been working together for a chunk of time now as well. So it's a great time to reflect, because people often talk about, I want it to be consistent. I want these things to last. So like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth either. So like, if we sit as to we are today, that's where you were a few months back. What have been your key achievements, or what's been the big things that you've taken and you've got from coming through the program?
I think key achievements for me is completing the programs. I've done a lot of programs in the past, and I think like they're all good in their own ways, and I won't name drop, but like they're all good in their own ways, but they're all like very one-dimensional. And I think that's the thing as well. Like for me, I think completing the program was actually, on the face of it, and I'll say it ended up being easier than I thought it was going to be, and it was very much more like I suppose it's kind of this domino effect where you introduce stuff as the program gets more difficult, and I won't drop any hints.
That's cool.
But like once you start overcoming all of these hurdles, you start going like, okay, I can do this. I didn't think I'll be able to do that. Now I can do it. And then it gets to this whole like mental state where, when I left as well, I very much did this, right, well, what do I hate? Absolutely hate the thought of doing. And if I hate it, I'm going to do it, and I want to become good at it. And I think that was this really weird thing where it was like, yeah, I hate doing this type of exercise, or I hate doing this. Right, I'm going to do it, and then it's going to become second nature.
Yeah, but that's how you build, I think, ownership and discipline. It's like there's things sometimes that we don't want to do, but you show up and do them and actually achieve them. That feels really good, and that builds your self-esteem, and you feel good for doing that. And I think like that mindset of what can I do, and actually that's challenging. Well, actually, how am I going to make it happen, and what I'm going to do? That for me is that answers a lot of questions in life, because you're not just being hit and smacked around the face by stuff. It's like, right, what are we going to do? Let's get our hands dirty. How are we going to approach it? And well, that's exactly why I want to go head first into it and work out why. And like, if you're in that state, I think that's a real powerful place to be, because I mean, you went through some pretty arduous times whilst we were in the program, like a fucking hurricane, like an actual, by the way, if you're watching, an actual hurricane, not like a metaphorical one. Like, and I always talk about with the guys that the obstacle is the way, things will happen in life when we're working that we don't know about. That's good, because actually you need to be able to roll with it and understand it. You were literally hit by a hurricane partway through the program. Like, you can't get more visceral than that. And I think, I'll let you speak to it, but even in that, it's like, well, what am I going to do? How can I look after my family? Well, I'm going to take care of myself and all the rest of it. And it's like, being able to roll with it through things like that I think that builds a level of resilience that's then allows you to sort of feel pretty much untouchable, or allows you to roll with shit as it slaps you on the face, because it always will, right?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there, because one of the things that always sticks in my head is it's not what you do when people are watching, it's what you do when people aren't watching.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that was a huge like epiphany to me. It was this. It's not, it's not the when life is, rosy and everything's good. That's not what makes you. It's when life's difficult, and then you've still got to do it. And I think, like, there's that whole piece about, that people talk about. It's like, the people that succeed are the ones that where they actually earn their stripes is when they're, when other people are asleep or they're not doing anything, and you're up and you're working.
Yeah.
And like that, and the whole hurricane thing was a part of that for me as well. So the hurricane was, something I've never experienced before. It was like a bunker down moment. Like, I had to get all my kids and family in that area within my house that I thought was going to be safe. And then it was like, I mean, the whole mental aspect of it, and the, it wasn't so physical. It was absolutely mental. That
totally.
So, how do you respond to that? And then how do you adapt? And how do you, because it's going to happen again.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not
yeah.
a hurricane, but something else.
But then we get metaphorical hurricanes in life, and like bad things, good things happen. Like, you know, you've got Christmas coming up, and like that can affect your mental and physical well-being, given what you put in your body and all the rest of it. That's more practical. But like, to think that these things aren't going to happen to you, let's say we're talking about working together in a program, is remiss. And for me, anything, if you want to work with someone that's worth its salt, needs to be able to help you adapt and learn to these things. And actually, that's the key. That's where the growth comes, because you show yourself, oh fuck, I can do that. Well, that was it. Doesn't mean the difficult bit isn't difficult. No, it's really fucking hard sometimes. But then when you come through it and you realize you can do it, and you are still alive, you are still breathing, and you're in a good spot, that's self-reinforcing, because it shows you can do other things. Like digging into some of the stuff that helped. I remember we talked about this once. I think you had something, you know, you had maybe a tricky conversation at work, or there was something, and it was like, rather than reacting, being able to stop and take a step back and being objective, like that sort of thing, again, helps you navigate these what are often difficult situations, but it allows you to react in a more pragmatic and objective way versus just being like at a kind of base level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think like I think one of the things is as well, you can spend so much time in your head, and I think the whole COVID thing has like amplified people spending all that time, and they're not living in that present moment. And I think you get this illusion in your head, like, well, I did anyway, where that, you know, the conversations in my head and things like that were not put in context. They were often taken out of context. And it then took me actually, you know, having that moment of instantly responding to a situation, but then stepping back and having a look at it objectively and saying, right, is this actually the message that you want to deliver? And then when you look at it objectively, you go, absolutely not, not. But you give your mind that space, you know, to sort of like respond emotionally, which everyone does, and then actually engage your mind and think logically. And that was
there's the monkey brain that goes, bah, bah, and you go, right, he's had his say, let him just calm down. Let's have 5 minutes. And come back, go, come on, monkey, we don't need that. That's not going to do us any favors. And it's like, then it's allow you to be objective. So I guess, like, it sounds to me, unless I'm putting words in your mouth here, Sam, like, I guess the key takeaways is that whole mental resilience, being able to sort of roll with stuff as it comes, and being in a headspace and a mindset where, you know, what can I do, and you know, being able to deal with adversity and positivity as it comes. What would you say, like, if we look at back, what were I guess the key learnings that have allowed you to be in that objective state, not reactive, leading the family? Like, what do you think, you know, if you can name a couple of things that has helped you during the process to get to that sort of place?
I would say the couple of, I suppose key learnings for me definitely is probably the relationship between, like, which I knew was there anyway, but not at this level, the relationship between sort of like mental wellness, physical health, accountability, and I suppose those are the key things. I think it's the link between all of them that is so important, because it really does build a foundation for everything else. And I think not only that, but also the layers below that, like what actually feeds into those pillars, you know. So what is important, what impacts, you know, how you view yourself, how accountable are you to yourself, like, you know, and what does that impact as well? So if you know, if your physical health isn't there, your mental health's not there, which includes, again, like accountability and things like that, then you know, what are the issues? You know, what are the issues there? How can you address that? That's, I say, for me, those are the key learnings, the relationship between all of them.
And I think, because I think the whole lot there is, as you said, really well, I think, really well put there, is it's all inextricably linked, because, you know, how can you have a rock solid mindset if you're staying up until midnight, reacting to all the emails that you get, using booze to unwind or de-stress, you know, waking up at 8 and then straight on your phone, you know, like not doing any exercise? Like, that doesn't scream high performance. I'm going to be objective, does it? But then equally, if you're smashing yourself with a load of exercise, but then not looking after your state and those other things as well, then that's also not really fit for purpose. And so, like you said, it's about making sure those bits look holistically. Now, layered on top of that, like you said, there's often some deep level stuff as well. There's practical things that we need to do, but maybe there's some limiting beliefs and that sort of stuff. Well, how can you address the deeper stuff if your fucking foundations are all over the place? So it's like, so you need to build from one or the other. And it's not to say one is less or more important than the other, but like you said, I think having a foundation that takes care of you physically and mentally to a certain level, that goes a very long way to helping you then go, right, well, now I've got my head above water. What else do we need to look at, and what are those other areas? And it's not to say those other areas aren't important, but they all kind of interlink, and you can't really have one without the other. And I think, and then the accountability, I think that you said there, how that layers on top, I believe, is that, well, when you start showing up and doing the things that you say you're going to do and committing to doing them, that raises your self-esteem. You feel better about yourself. You show yourself you can be accountable. So then some of these other areas that you might need to take a handle of, well, I've done that there, so well, maybe I can do that here as well. And and then it becomes this virtuous cycle across the board. I've talked a lot, but does that resonate, Sam?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think, like, you know, I mean, without a doubt, because I mean, even if you just take like physical fitness and like diet into account, so your diet is going to affect your mental well-being. You know, it is hands down. Your physical health, you know, is also going to affect your mental well-being as well. And if those two, and they're just a small part of it, but if those two, you know, both of those equal positive, then that positivity then goes everywhere else. So that positivity then goes into your work. It then goes into your relationships, you know, with your kids, your partners, whatever. And it's like, and it is massively linked, hugely linked, I think.
Yeah. So, well, how can I be more present with my kids, and how can I not be snapping irritable at the end of the day? How do I set good work-life boundaries? There's practical things you need to do, but right at the start, it's this and this, right? And
definitely
get that in a pretty decent state, and then you're able to go, well, or maybe I've got the confidence now because I'm feeling a bit better myself. I could probably just put a stop in at maybe 6 o'clock and not pick my phone up when I get in. Let's see how that goes. Versus I've got to be on all the time, and if I don't answer my phone, because you know, and so again, it's silly. There we go. That's better. It's always quite, I guess, the chicken and egg piece is, well, if you're not feeling great, how do you do it? Well, for me, it's about start looking yourself, like you said right at the start, you know, asking yourself some questions, look at yourself first, put those foundations in place, and then it'll put you in a better state to be able to look at all those moving parts, because they all need addressing. But like, if you're not taking care of yourself as the fulcrum at the start, well, then a lot of it, I'd say, it's like pissing in the wind. It's not going to go very well.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Awesome. What? Slightly random question, Sam. It might be one that's multifaceted. But what if you could name like one thing, or I'll ask you another question. What would you say was the most surprising thing, or the thing that I didn't really expect that of having worked together?
I'd say the more mental side of it. I think I've always considered myself to be extremely strong mentally. I would say but I think as and this is again only speaking for myself, as I've got older, you have to deal with the demons that you haven't dealt with before. And how do you deal with them? And how do you, I think as you get older as well, you sort of, again, trying to talk about myself because I'm getting older, it's like you think these things don't bother you, things that have happened, but they actually do. Yeah. And they don't, and they manifest themselves in ways that you didn't realize. And then I think for me, it was that how deep that can go, you know? And I think that's what surprised me. It was this, and not only that, but there is a solution to it as well. Because I don't think many of us are taught how to deal with particular things or how to process.
Yeah.
And processing, I think that was key for me. Things that I didn't think were going to make that much of an impact actually made a lot of impact.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is so true. There's lots of things that have happened to, I say us, all of us, the royal us, you know, throughout our lives. And especially as blokes, we're making a sweeping generalization, but I say generally as blokes, like, we're not the best at recognizing that and identifying that. And no one is, it's tricky. But then, like, I think if you're willing to embrace that, because sometimes it's uncomfortable having a look internally and looking at some of the deeper stuff alongside the practical nature of what we do. I keep pointing at that. That's the little 1%, right? There's the practical things. But then there's the deeper stuff. Like I said earlier, they're both equally important. But when you do the deeper stuff, that's sometimes more difficult. That's the harder stuff, because you're like, oh, I don't really like this. I don't like what that. Yeah. But then what you realize when you do it is you go, oh, actually, having looked at that and addressed it and worked through that, I feel fucking great. And it's like a fog's lifting. And if you get a bit of a taste for that, or you recognize that, it's like doing a hard workout that you don't want to do, you feel great afterwards. Having a look internally and discovering some stuff about yourself that's been holding you back that you don't realize, and then acknowledging that and letting go of it, it's a similar parallel, but it feels just as fucking good, if not more liberating. Does that make sense? Or are we on the same page with that? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think as well, like the whole processing piece, like the whole processing is like one of the things that I found is one of the techniques that you introduced allowed me to identify sort of like an issue that was like reoccurring. So it's like, look, you go through this, you see the same reoccurring issue coming up. Like, this is clearly an issue to you. You need to do something about it, rather than just going, oh, well, I'm going to moan about this one day, I'm going to moan about it another day. And you're actually doing something with it. Yeah. So you're going, well, this is constantly an issue. Like, do something about it. And then you can, in your head, it then allows you to say, okay, like, what are the options to address this? And then explore those. And that was a big thing for me as well.
Yeah. That I think that speaks to what you said kind of near the start about, like, well, how are you feeling now? And it's about seeing those discomfort areas. I don't like that, but I'm going to go for it anyway. And that's like, well, having the consciousness and I guess the clarity to be able to recognize the things as they come up. Oh, that's happening. Then not going, oh, woe is me, it's the universe. Fuck, that's annoying. Right, well, there's something going on here. Could be practical, could be deeper, whatever. Right, well, given that keeps happening, what can I do differently? How can I change that? That is me. That's what it's all about. That's about long-term, sustainable, being able to work through what you need to work through as life happens to you, right? And I think that's because that puts you in the driver's seat. It doesn't mean the thing that you look at and whatever might not be difficult. It doesn't mean that the solution is going to be immediately straightforward, but being able to recognize, identify it, and then also look at it and go, right, well, let's get my hands dirty. Let's have a look at this versus ignore it and just blame the world. I think that's a really powerful place to be.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think it's easy as well to, like you just alluded to there, like it's easy to not take ownership as well. So it's easy to say, right, well, there's a reason why I can't do this. I can't do this because I wasn't brought up like this, or I wasn't given these foundations when I was young. And I think for me, what it does is it just gets rid of all that rubbish and then just puts you straight in a right, take control. Yeah, you're not. And another thing as well, I think it was someone, I was watching something that you recommended, and it was like, how do you get up? How do you do that? How do you get the motivation? How do you get the motivation to do these things? And it was like, well, motivation is something like, it's not even, it's not even about motivation. It's about waking up in the morning and going, right, like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This isn't like, and there's nothing else to discuss beyond that. I do this because this is who I am.
Yeah. How do you get up at 5:30 in the morning? At base level, you get up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Just get up. Just get up. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know there's nuance to that, but at some point, that is what you do. That's it. Yeah. And it's showing yourself that you do that, and then that snowballs. Look, Sam, I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to keep you for too long. I think this has been a really helpful conversation. I really appreciate your feedback and your insights, and I'm sure anyone watching has got a lot from it. Before we get off, if anyone was watching this, they were like on the fence about working with a coach, maybe they've looked at some of my stuff, or just generally thinking, I'm not quite where I want to be, but they're not sure about engaging with someone. What would you say to them?
I'd say, first of all, there's no harm in having a chat. Right, if you've got to this stage and you're probably watching this, you're probably already at the point where you're sitting on the fence going, okay, you're exploring your options. There's absolutely no harm with having a chat with you, Luke. And I think the other thing as well is that, there's so many of these now. I think so many people have provided feedback, and it's not just like, I think people, if you're one of those people where you're looking at and there's a gap in your life and you can't figure out what it is, I think that there's no harm in having a chat, and if anything, it may change absolutely the whole way you look at everything, which is awesome. It's better to take a risk than not take a risk, and then all you've got to do is complete it.
Yeah, and then net result, we are where we are, right? That's
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Sam. So, look, like I said, I don't want to take any more of your time. Sam, thank you for your time. I hope anyone's watching's got a lot of help and insight from that. If anyone is watching, they're interested in having a chat, they'd like to speak to me about what me and Sam are chatting about, drop me a note in the comments or drop me a DM. We can book in a quick call and see where you're at. On that note, Sam, have an amazing Christmas. It's been a pleasure chatting as always, mate. Continue smashing it. Anyone else, have a great Wednesday and enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Thank you.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks, Luke.
Bye-bye.